Hey guys, with another One Take review and the 8th entry in my Rock Hall review series for this year. Today I'm talking about none other than the 1972 album No Secrets by Carly Simon. And the reason I'm sure most people know this, maybe even most of you that are watching this, is because of the hit that was You're So Vain. That was pretty much the song that defined Carly Simon's career. Even today, it's sometimes the only song people really know by her. But overall, I think No Secrets is actually a very strong album, even besides that very, very great single. Carly Simon is maybe most stood out to me over time due to her vocal work, which is weird because overall, Simon isn't really that different from, say, Carole King or Joni Mitchell, two artists who I'm not a huge fan of. I actively dislike Carole King, and I'm indifferent on a good portion of Joni Mitchell's music. So the fact that Carly Simon really isn't all that different from her peers and that I like her so much more is really inexplicable. I can't lie and say there's a reason, really. My only explanation would be maybe that I think my brain at least thinks that Simon's vocal style kind of suits her instrumentals that she's given better. But even then, I can't really say that for certain because, in a way, that's not true. It's kind of very similar to what many other similar artists that I have a distaste for were doing at around the same time in the late '60s and early '70s. But I think that Carly Simon does some excellent vocal work here, and songs like We Have No Secrets are kind of elevated to another level due to her voice. As far as instrumentals go, however, I do think that No Secrets is significantly less noteworthy. The main thing here that stands out to me, the most immediate aspect of the record, even with a good amount of very noteworthy other individuals that were on this album, the main thing that stands out to me is kind of Carly Simon's piano work, honestly. That's the main thing. And there are some tracks here that have really great piano work, and then there's other songs that just don't really, and as such, kind of fall into very unmemorable territory, which is kind of weird because, as I'll get into in a moment, there's some very great musicians on here, but even then, those songs aren't bad or anything like that. There's songs like His Friends Are More Than Fond of Robin that kind of just don't really stick out to me, and as such, they are just kind of forgettable tracks overall, and they don't really weaken, but they definitely don't kind of improve upon what Carly Simon's vocal work and songwriting are establishing throughout the song. Now, like I was saying, the commonly not very interesting or intriguing or memorable instrumentation that's found throughout No Secrets is really shocking when you see who is actually behind the album besides Carly Simon. I mean, all things considered, of course, this is a Carly Simon solo record, but this is kind of like an all-star group. I mean, you've got Paul McCartney and his then wife Linda, and besides the fact that you have an ex-Beatle and his very beloved musician wife, you've also got James Taylor's on here, the frequent Rolling Stones collaborator and pianist slash key player Nicky Hopkins. You've got Mick Jagger himself on here, does backing vocals. And I mean, honestly, there's just not that much to write home about in terms of instrumentals. It's almost shocking. On paper, this seems like this would be such an amazing album and just a collaboration of just absolute forces of nature in music from the late 60s and even a little bit of the very early 70s, but it really just ultimately doesn't amount to much that's all that interesting, and it just kind of feels like a group of friends who happen to be some of the world's most famous musicians just got together and sort of noodled around for a little bit and then got some basic sheet music and just played along to that and left the studio. And I mean, there are a couple moments here that stand out. Again, I might have bass player bias for this one, but Klaus Vormann's bass line on the track You're So Vain, which, like I said before, is easily the most famous cut off of this album. I think it's fantastic, but beyond those small little details like that, there's really not a lot to say about this album, which is disappointing, all things considered. I mean, really, the amount of legendary artists on this album sets a fairly high bar, even though it is technically a Carly Simon album. That bar just never gets met, really, for the most part, at least. Of course, being a singer-songwriter type, big focus on Carly Simon's music has to do with her lyricism, and I think that her songwriting is either very strong or very not very good and kind of corny and cheesy at times, and there's rarely any in between. I mean, you've got songs like Embrace Me, You Child, and It Was So Easy that are just penned beautifully, in my opinion, and they end up becoming highlights of the album because of that excellent songwriting. And this basically proves that Carly Simon was much more than just the clever, kind of mildly bitter song that was You're So Vain. she really is an amazing songwriter, and those aforementioned tracks, among others here, absolutely prove that. But then after that, you have songs like Night Owl that just kind of, while they are instrumentally competent, and that's about the highest praise I can give to them as far as instrumentals go, they just kind of feel like outdated kitsch that just isn't all that good anymore. It just doesn't. I'm not saying that everything needs to feel fresh from the 70s, but there does become a point where it's not even the ironic enjoyability that defines that kitsch part of outdated kitsch, and it just becomes kind of outdated, and that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, I can't really say that I enjoy it too much. I think it's just kind of sappy at times, and there's some people that love that, but I'm not one of them, unfortunately. So about half this album is really great songwriting to me, and about the other half of this album is just nothing that at least really grabs me personally. So overall, no secret, it is no secret that this is not a masterpiece by any means. But at the same time, I do think it's at least a notch better than some similar releases by the likes of Carole King and James Taylor, similar artists from the same time period. But even then, a lot of people will kind of knock on this album for it being, dated and whatnot. And I mean, yeah, it's aged like a loaf of bread in mid-July sun, but at the same time, there's some good songwriting here. Instrumentals are fine. Carly Simon's voice is lovely, and there are a couple of really great tracks just kind of thrown about. And even though I do always like to sometimes recommend deeper cuts, the number one recommendation I do have off here is You're So Vain. That is just a fantastic song, and probably one of the best songs that whole early 70s and late 60s singer-songwriter soft rock kind of thing ever produced. One of the best, I should say. And yeah, with that being said, this album's it's good but not great. But again, it's still just a cut above the rest, but not by much. So 3.5 stars out of 5. Good album. Now this is usually the part of the review where I just kind of sign off, and then you guys just go and watch whatever you feel like watching, another review or whatever. But since this is my Rock Hall review series, I talk about the artist, their nomination for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, do they deserve it, will they get in, etc., etc. And as far as Carly Simon goes, I'm gonna give her a so on the deservingness aspect. On one hand, I do like Carly Simon, and I do think that there needs to be more solo female artist representation, or just female representation in general in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's not even like a sort of a I just genuinely mean it. I'm not saying it to like just kind of come across as like I'm trying to say something that will get a general audience's approval. It just sort of is a genuine lack of women in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. When bands like Sleater-Kinney and the Runaways aren't inducted, and the Go-Go's just got inducted, it's shocking to me. It genuinely is. But at the same time, I don't think Carly Simon's a great choice. Again, the only thing that I can say she is like truly remembered for is "You're So Vain." That's arguably her only song that's really transcended generations, but at the same time, she was, big for her time period and stuff, so if she did get in, I wouldn't totally be complaining or anything like that, but I don't know, at the same time, it's just sort of, I feel like there are other better singer-songwriter types to induct, like Harry Nilsson and Warren Zevon, and I think that there are better solo women to induct as well, like Pat Benatar and Cyndi Lauper, who, again, another two women that really deserve to be in that aren't. So overall, I'm gonna say I'm pretty indifferent on her induction. I wouldn't do it myself, but I mean, who knows, maybe. Now, as far as likeliness of induction goes, I do think that's a bit of a trickier thing, because this is a pretty stacked ballot this year. There's some really likely artists, and honestly, I could probably break down the nominee list to about a little under 3/4 of who I think has a good chance of getting in this year. There's only a couple artists that I don't think have a shot. And I mean, Carly Simon may not be the young person's choice of induction, but she has connections in the music industry, and she would absolutely please an older audience that are more focused on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I mean, who knows? She could totally get in. I mean, honestly, I'm mainly the connections is where it comes in. I think because when you look at her peers like Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and Neil Young, that are all inducted, and maybe a couple other just kind of non-singer-songwriter types that end up being fans of that style, which was a lot of people who ended up growing up in the late 60s and early 70s that are now getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as the hall opens up to more late 80s and early 90s acts. I mean, who knows? She has a chance. I don't think it'll happen this year, but she could always be kind of a dark horse inductee, and there, again, are a couple artists like that on the ballot this year, so I'd say she maybe has like a 35% chance of getting in, and maybe that's putting it a little too high, but if she doesn't get in this year, I will not be surprised if she does get in within the next 5 years. I do think that Carly Simon is an inevitable inductee and probably the main choice for the late 60s, early 70s singer songwriter. Of course, last year that was, Todd Rundgren before he got inducted. So, yeah, I think Carly Simon has a pretty good shot of getting inducted. I just don't know if it's about this year. But anyways, yeah, No Secrets as an album, I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. It's good but not great. There are a lot of things that could have been done better, but it's still a pretty solid release for what it is, and I think it's very enjoyable. I don't think there's necessarily a terrible song on it. There are a few, not very good songs, but still nonetheless. Does she deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? So. I'm kind of indifferent about it all, if I'm being honest. And then, will she get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Again, this year anyway, I'm so kind of 50-50 on that as well, but at the same time, I do think that she has a pretty solid chance of getting inducted eventually, and who knows, it could be this year for all I know. I mean, artists that I think will get in this year, a lot of times, don't get in. I thought that when Judas Priest got nominated for the first time several years ago now, I thought that they were going to be a first ballot inductee because everyone was waiting for that to happen, and they still aren't inducted. So, I mean, who knows? I could be completely wrong. Who know? For all I know, maybe A Tribe Called Quest will get in this year. My point is, any artist can get in, and Carly Simon can be one of those artists. So maybe she has a chance. She has a lot of connections. So yeah. Anyways, this album, No Secrets, 3.5 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that's the end of this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.